We have been. Catherine, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Fox News alert, and of course, as the world remains preoccupied with the search for that Malaysian airline Flight 370, there has also been the invasion and annexation of Crimea to deal with. That's what the president plans to make some remarks on just outside the White House. He's on the South Line. He'll be stepping up to the lectern there at any moment to make some comments about what he intends to do regarding the annexation of Crimea. There's the president. He's about to head to Orlando today. From the White House, he'll head for Joint Base Andrews. Let's hear what he has to say about Crimea.
Update on the situation in Ukraine and the steps that the United States is taking in response. Over the last several days, we've continued to be deeply concerned by events in Ukraine. We've seen an illegal referendum in Crimea, an illegitimate move by the Russians to annex Crimea, and dangerous risks of escalation, including threats to Ukrainian personnel in Crimea and threats to southern and eastern Ukraine as well. These are all choices that the Russian government has made, choices that have been rejected by the international community as well as the government of Ukraine. And because of these choices, the United States is today moving, as we said we would, to impose additional costs on Russia. Based on the executive order that I signed in response to Russia's initial intervention in Ukraine, we're imposing sanctions on more senior officials of the Russian government. In addition, we are today sanctioning a number of other individuals with substantial resources and influence who provide material support to the Russian leadership, as well as a bank that provides material support to these individuals. Now, we're taking these steps as part of our response to what Russia has already done in Crimea. At the same time, the world is watching with grave concern as Russia has positioned its military in a way that could lead to further incursions into southern and eastern Ukraine. For this reason, we've been working closely with our European partners to develop more severe actions that could be taken if Russia continues to escalate the situation. As part of that process, I signed a new executive order today that gives us the authority to impose sanctions not just on individuals but on key sectors of the Russian economy. This is not our preferred outcome. These sanctions would not only have a significant impact on the Russian economy, but could also be disruptive to the global economy. However, Russia must know that further escalation will only isolate it further from the international community. The basic principles that govern relations between nations in Europe and around the world must be upheld in the 21st century. That includes respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity. The notion that nations do not simply redraw borders or make decisions at the expense of their neighbors simply because they are larger or more powerful. One of our other top priorities continues to be providing assistance to the government of Ukraine so it can stabilize its economy and meet the basic needs of the Ukrainian people. As I travel to Europe next week to meet with the G7 and other European and Asian allies, I once again urge Congress to pass legislation that is necessary to provide this assistance, and do it right away. Expressions of support are not enough. We need action. I also hope that the IMF moves swiftly to provide a significant package of support for Ukrainians as they pursue reforms. In Europe, I'll also be reinforcing a message that Vice President Biden carried to Poland and the Baltic states this week. America's support for our NATO allies is unwavering. We're bound together by our profound Article 5 commitment to defend one another and by a set of shared values that so many generations sacrificed for. We've already increased our support for our Eastern European allies, and we will continue to strengthen NATO's collective defense, and we will step up our cooperation with Europe on economic and energy issues as well. Now, let me close by making a final point. Diplomacy between the United States and Russia continues. We've emphasized that Russia still has a different path available, one that de-escalates the situation and one that involves Russia pursuing a diplomatic solution with the government in Kiev. with the support of the international community. The Russian people need to know, and Mr. Putin needs to understand, that the Ukrainians shouldn't have to choose between the West and Russia. We want the Ukrainian people to determine their own destiny and to have good relations with the United States, with Russia, with Europe, with anyone that they choose. That can only happen if Russia also recognizes the rights of all the Ukrainian people to determine their future as free individuals and as a sovereign nation. Rights that people and nations around the world understand and support. Thank you very much, everybody.
Just pausing
Thank
there. Every once in a while, he gets a question shouted, and the president takes the liberty to answer that question. As John mentioned, he's off to Florida today to talk a little bit about the economy. We relied on specifics, but we do have some news from the president, who says today that he signed a new executive order that would include sanctions not just for individuals, as we saw earlier this week, but also for certain sectors, key sectors of the Russian economy. Let's talk a little bit about this with Andrew Kuchins. He's the director of Russia and Eurasia programs at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, a guest we've been looking forward to, and we're going to have a longer conversation, Andrew, a little later on in the program. But what's your reaction to what the president had to say? What do you think the impact is, light in specifics as we are?
My reaction is too little, too late. It essentially condones what Mr. Putin has already done. There's nothing that the president said, in my view, that will deter Mr. Putin from taking further steps that could be extremely dangerous. And my read on the speech that Mr. Putin gave on Tuesday is that from his standpoint, the door is wide open to do pretty much whatever he sees fit. So Mr. Putin, again, is controlling the battlefield, so to speak, and we're reacting, and the reactions are too little and they're too weak.
How do we regain control?
Well, there's not a mention of what we do to provide some military support to Ukraine. Now, I'm not talking about providing boots on the ground. I'm not talking about providing an Article 5 commitment to Ukraine by NATO. That's out of the question. But there are a number of measures that we can do to provide the Ukrainian government better support through intelligence measures, through measures to give them a better sense of what actually is happening in their airspace and on their territory. You know, it's amazing to me that there has not been more talked about the seizure of a gas plant outside of Crimea that was done by Russian helicopters delivering special forces there. That seems to have gone sort of unnoticed. And Mr. Putin's takeaway has got to be, look, this is a very, very permissive environment. There are other things that I can get away with. The Ukrainians, I think we have to step up and be prepared to support them more overtly with military support that would put them in a better position to defend their own territory.
One of the things that you also say, Andrew, is that we're in a profoundly different place with Russia than where we were 25 years ago, and that's going to be the topic of our conversation in just a short while coming up on Happening Now. We had that breaking news. We wanted your reaction, but we'll have a broader conversation on Russia in just a few moments. Andrew, thank you.
My pleasure.
With the Obamacare deadline for enrollment